Hi everyone, my name is Emily Paige Wilson, and I am joining you tonight from my home office in Ellensburg, Washington. Before I get started, I want to give a thank you to Kai Coggin for organizing all of this. I don't think we've ever connected in person, Kai, but I am a big fan of yours virtually. I think you are such a wonderful, positive light. Thank you to everybody else in the Wednesday night poetry community. I appreciate being able to share this time and space with you. Tonight I'm going to read from my recently released new chapbook entitled Hypochondria, Least Powerful of the Greek Gods. It was released this past August from Glass Poetry Press. So shout out to Tony Frame for being just a wonderful human being in general, but also a really great editor as well. This collection centers on health anxiety. It's a theme that comes up in this book very often. It's also found in the titular character herself. Her name is literally Hypochondria. So I'm going to open tonight's reading with the first poem that introduces her. It's also, it shares the same title as the chapbook, Hypochondria, Least Powerful of the Greek Gods, 1. When confronted with this, she grows contentious, says, define power. She has a point. Hypochondria has this reoccurring nightmare in which she owns wheat fields too large to harvest in time. She spends the dream running around in a pink nightgown, painstakingly trying to break each blackened grain off the stalk before it rots. Hypochondria once had lunch duty with Hades, and he told her, that's some thorough grief you have. She was pleased. She once pulled out 2 teeth because she felt a filling split, pain spilling into her nerves like brides into soft gowns. Hypochondria must be so gentle now when she bites down, and only smiles as wide as her pride permit. Some time ago, Apollo was careless and dropped a sunrise onto her skin. It splashed and charred her arm, a second-degree burn she nursed for weeks, all the while knowing the scar would be shaped like a mountain range, on which it will never snow. Her favorite color has always been beige. She lets the other gods think it's because she's boring, but she loves it. This, the first color clouds turn when they finally let the light in. Hypochondria is not looking forward to the advent of cars, all the hope she'll have to hand out so people can get home safely. She'll spend each night standing on the highway side in the 4-legged, observant form of a deer. So a lot of times when I read from this collection, people ask where the concept came from. And I like to share a coping mechanism that really engendered this entire creative process with Hypochondria as a character. I went through a period where I was experiencing something that wasn't life-threatening, but it was a medical issue. It was really painful, and I had to go to doctor after doctor, and my concerns weren't taken very seriously. And so I lived with something that was very painful for years, and in turn it created a really intense period of health anxiety for me because I felt like I couldn't trust myself and my relationship with my body anymore. And it's really difficult when doctors are saying, no, there's nothing there, and you know that's just not true. So when I was having really bad anxiety about my health and kind of going into toxic thought spirals, a therapist suggested whenever you're on this precipice and you know you're about to give into anxiety, anthropomorphize your anxiety, cast it like into its own space as its own character in your mind's eye, and talk to it the way that you would talk to a child and just say, you know, I see you, I feel you, you're here, but I don't need you right now. And think about the language that you're using when you're talking to your anxiety kind of outside of yourself. You're probably going to be more patient and kind with it than the things you say to yourself in your head. And so through this coping mechanism, I developed this character of Hypochondria. And in this collection, I follow her throughout the poems, and she has to learn a lot about her relationship with the other Greek gods, where her place in Mount Olympus is, but also her relationship with her body as well. And the second poem that I'm going to share is about Hypochondria going to the doctor, but it's entitled Hypochondria Reads Her Tarot. And each line of the poem is just a tarot card. I use this as a writing prompt. I just pulled cards. And then the actual text of the poem can be found in footnotes at the page's bottom. Hypochondria reads her tarot. Daughter of Wands, the Devil, the Magician, Father of Wands. 1. Her doctor's daughter was born a drought. This difficulty has made him resentful. As Hypochondria listed her symptoms, she held them precious and blue as bird eggs. 3. When her doctor heard her symptoms, he held them like blackberries not worth the bramble, the briars of trying to tell a truth about the body. She can't remember where into her skin his cold sticks slid, only that they glowed with the softness of a white gold light. Something that I also like to share in readings is that my experience having my concerns overlooked in the medical world, that's something that happens a lot, especially to women, but even more so to Black women. And that's something that's just been documented. We know that that population doesn't often get the care that they need. And so 20% of all of the proceeds of this chapbook go to the Black Women's Health Imperative. It's a really cool nonprofit. I just like to share it with folks. They advocate for racial justice in the medical field. And so if you want to pick up a copy, you can feel free to reach out to me. I have some signed ones that I would love to send your way if you're interested. But I also like to talk about that nonprofit because it's really, their work's very important to me and to the content, I think, that this chapbook explores. It's something else that's interesting to note as I go back and I read this work now. All of this was written pre-COVID and pre-pandemic. And so you can imagine that even though I feel much more confident now in the coping mechanisms that I have for my health anxiety, having to social distance and isolate and being very concerned about my health and the health of my loved ones, that can be really triggering for my health anxiety. And so it's interesting to go back and to read these poems that I wrote pre-pandemic and to think about them now. This poem that I'm about to share is entitled On the Wall, and it talks about being worried about my family's health and not being able to see them very often. And it also talks about language and the importance of language in regards to health and safety. And I've just read through it now, and it strikes a very different chord, especially with how the outgoing political administration, I feel like, really weaponized language against public health safety. This poem is entitled On the Wall. Why do so many body parts sound like him? Hymen, humerus, hamstring, hip, heart. Or why does a hymn want so much to sound like our bodies? In ancient Egypt, only scribes were allowed to write. The belief that putting a word on paper was to summon the thing itself, a bird or a famine fastened in letters. Archaeologists have discovered jars covered in the shapes of what they think were supposed to be words, attempted summonings by people who knew of the spells and language, even when they weren't allowed to read. Why do so many body parts sound like panic? Palate, pelvis, plexus, pancreas, pubis. When it has been too long since I've seen my family, I write health, health, health on slips of scrap paper. I wonder what shape the Egyptians gave to pain. A circle coming to a point, painted red on clay pots. I'm not trying to write a thesis here, just a plea for my body to perform in accordance to textbooks. I'm not interested in the etymology of a word, but the entire music behind it, not the origins, but the tambourine. Something that I get asked as well when I read these poems or if I will return to the character of Hypochondria, if readers can expect to see her and the broader cast of characters again. And I don't know. I want to have a better answer than that, right? That's such a cop-out writer answer. I don't know. But I think because this is just a chapbook in terms of length, that there are many more facets of Hypochondria's story to be explored, and it definitely could populate more pages. But I also don't know if I ever want to be in the headspace where I rely on her as a coping mechanism in a way that allows her world to come more freely to me, if that makes sense. And so something I think about a lot is, now that my health anxiety isn't as bad as it was, still knowing that that's something that I will always live with, right? And it's there before and it after. And this poem speaks to that question. It's entitled Now. Before, I was listless in my own apocalypse, aloof as eye contact between tobacco leaves. A village dependent on driftwood and despondent news, the gloss of gossip. Before, I never knew my lover interrupts his own interior with shadows and silver guesses of a sinister future. Before, I thought all our insecurities were mine and mine alone. Now that I've seen the sheen of fear and how it fidgets his glitter on his fingertips, I will be better. Now, I want to carve him a crown spun from the skin of browned plums, drum his every arrival on the tidal spines of T-sharks, embark on the bridge between muscle and bone, a pink made from pearls of unknown origin, if it will keep him asleep more surely. I will be disciplined as a splint, scrutinized as shine, tiny and precise as the beech weed's single stalk, its black shadow cast against the night's white arrival, or the one early star that lay in the lavender above. So for my final poem, it's probably one of my favorite poems in the collection. Maybe it is my favorite. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that. The others will get jealous. But as I mentioned earlier, Hypochondria is our titular character in this collection, but she is one character in a cast of many. And another favorite persona of mine in this book is that of Sisyphus. And something that I thought about a lot in writing this collection is, how do we talk about mental health in a way that validates it just as much as physical well-being, but also we don't take any language that's appropriative in that discussion, if that makes sense. It's something I think about a lot. And Sisyphus, to me, became a really important metaphor for this idea of living with chronic embedded physical pain. And in the book, Sisyphus is Hypochondria's half-brother, and they have a very estranged relationship. And this poem is in Sisyphus's voice. There's also a Fleetwood Mac lyric thrown in here, so keep your ears open. And this poem, which is the one I will close out with, is entitled Sisyphus Tries Meditating. How is the crushed velvet of my breath supposed to ease this sinking? Breath, and already I am restless. The chirping in my chest I left for so long. Breath, incessant, yet empty as an emerald. To facet the air with each exhale, breath, I dream of a necklace, an amulet of freshwater pearls strung in place for each damning thing I've ever said to my mother. Her pain pressed to my chest so I can polish it into forgiveness. What is that slow stone roll of thunder I hear? How near the time to wind that boulder back up the hill? My inhales frail as baby's breath, imagine them a bouquet I could send my sister. A note. I have thought kindly of you. Aren't you feeling better now in today's cross-stitched blue? All my thoughts caught an announcement of jasper in emerald parade, breath and breath. I want more confidence, not for myself, but to be less of a field mind for those who cross through the swamp fog of my fears, breath and back to the velvet. I wish my name, too, were a word that sounded like what it meant, soft, crushed, playing with the light. Thank you guys so much. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you guys stay safe and well. Bye.